Hey gang, we are going live here in a second. Ignore the little countdown. As soon as I hit start streaming, it kind of reset. But just gonna wait for some of y'all to chime in, and we'll just answer some questions, hang out for a little bit, see what everybody's been up to. I feel like that's a really close Zoom, maybe. But let me know if y'all can hear me okay, if you can see me okay, and we'll just wait for a few of you guys to the tune in, and we'll get started here in a moment. I mean, we're already started, but we'll answer some questions. Be sure to ask your questions. Send them over to the chat. Let me know if you have any screen printing questions, any business questions, and all that stuff. And let's just go ahead. We'll get this party started. I don't know why. I feel like I need to roll out some sort of intro. I guess it goes back to the cam, the print life kind of days. But let's do it. Why not? It's fun. Welcome back to another edition of Shop Talk Live. It's been a little bit, been quite busy, lots going on. I do plan on getting more into a regular schedule, but I've been busy with just work, keeping up with just doing things on the back end that's requiring a lot of attention. Once I kind of get that all situated, I'll be able to kind of schedule more time to do this kind of stuff. It's 8 o'clock here, Houston, Texas, Central Standard Time. And I'm still at the shop. Finished up a print job. There's another print job I need to do, which I may do later tonight once I get something to eat, or I might just do it first thing tomorrow. I don't know. We shall see. I guess it depends on my energy level. But let's go ahead and we'll answer some questions over here, or at least acknowledge you guys. A-Bomb, what's up? How you doing? Good to have you. Print it to win it. What up? How you doing, buddy? Good to have you. Bad Brad, how you doing? Brad. What's up, Matt? Good to have you on. I hope you're doing well. How's the t-shirt thing going for you? T-shirt chick, Sin, how are you doing? Been a while since I've kind of been on YouTube to consume what you've been up to, and Rye Beats. Occasionally I check in, see what's going on. Let's see. I was actually wondering if you can think of any pitfalls when switching to an auto that people have to worry about. I mean, there's things to consider, such as your electricity. We've been running, one of the other things I would say is we've been running the same conveyor dryer for a long time. We have yet to upgrade that because, I mean, it handles it just fine. There's times when we crush it, but it's generally when we have 4 people working on the press, one loading, one unloading, one constantly loading ink, and then the other is stacking the shirts as they come out the dryer, and then that person is also kind of in charge of bringing shirts back and forth. So as long as you got if it requires air, plumbing, air compressor for it, your power hooked up, a dryer to handle it, I certainly wouldn't run an automatic with a tiny little, 18-inch belt. I think ours is 24, and it handles it okay. There's a little bit of a learning curve. I wouldn't necessarily call it a pitfall. And you kind of have to get used to walking around the press rather than, generally with the manual, you can just kind of stay stationary. And so you kind of have to get used to walking around the press. The other thing is keeping an eye on your ink. So it's not as obvious when you're running out of ink versus like on a manual press where you're constantly swinging those screens right in front of you. So just make sure you put enough ink in there. I wouldn't go too crazy with it. Put enough in there for about 24 or a dozen. You don't want the ink like riding up on the squeegee because then it just creates more of a mess. Aside from that, make sure your pinholes are good because depending on the auto and how many stations there are, before you realize it, you'll have printed however many stations your auto has. Say, for example, ours has 10 stations, and by the time it's printed 10 shirts, I'm like, oh, okay, well, there's a pinhole. There's 10 shirts I got to remove a pinhole from. I'd say that's probably the biggest thing. And then, learning how to use your press in particular and just dialing in the squeegee pressure. It'll take maybe a job or two to kind of really get it dialed in. But once you got it dialed in, that's not too bad. And let's see, what did I miss? How is the boss? Well, interesting enough. I mean, this year's been a tough year for us, for Shannon especially. She kind of seemed to like be coming back around, and then a couple weeks ago, had to take her back to the hospital. She was just got sick again, and oh boy, so I took her to the hospital. I basically had to drag her there. She's very stubborn when it comes to that stuff, but made her go. She just doesn't like staying in the hospital and them just kind of giving her bad news. So long story short, we took her to the hospital. She had to have like 6 blood transfusions. And this is a lot of personal stuff I'm sharing, but I know you guys are probably curious. And she was there for about a week, and they didn't really, or we're keeping positive, and I know at the end of the day, what a doctor says, or they're kind of, what they think's going to end up happening isn't necessarily what is going to happen. But I mean, if I had to be honest, the doctors were pretty straightforward. She asked, about how long she'd be around or if she's essentially passing away. And they told her, I think it was like a 65% chance of 3 months, which was pretty hard news to hear. And to be honest, it's been really stressful. And that's part of the reason I really haven't been on, is because I've been taking care of her, trying to take care of the business. And she's come first, to everything. But obviously we have to make a living. And that was some really tough news to get, and it's been it's been one of those years, and I don't know what to make of it. So we're all, between myself, Shannon's father, her mom. She's been staying since she got out of the hospital. She's been staying with her mom and dad. So her father's a doctor. I'm sure maybe we've talked about this before, but he's a doctor. Her mom's a retired nurse. So she's in better hands with them than she is with me. And, we're all just kind of taking it a day at a time, just making sure she's going to her appointments, taking the meds she needs to do, and just kind of really taking it from there. Because, I mean, that's all we can really do at this point. I mean, it's in God's hands at this point. So that's the update. It's been I don't know. It's been very heartbreaking and stressful, to say the least. I mean, kind of had a nervous breakdown myself not that long ago. Had to go and seek some therapy and stuff like that to kind of not necessarily cope with it all, but um, I don't know. It's crazy. I don't know. It's not, you know, there's no rule book about how to handle these kind of things, what to expect, what to do. So we're all just trying to. I mean, I don't even know. I don't even know what to say. It's it sucks. I hate it, but I mean, it is what it is. Let's see. Alexis S. Hey, Print Brother. Hails from New York City. Good to have you. Mr. DNY 3000. Good to have you. Do you guys keep up with screen tension? We order pre-stretched screens and use them until they break. I hate it. We do the same thing. I never really could justify the cost. And I mean, if I wouldn't worry about those, unless you're a bigger operation where you're just going through hundreds of screens a day. I wouldn't really worry about the, I forget what they're called. I wouldn't worry about like those roller screens until you get to a certain point towards where you're going to justify getting those screens and having being able to adjust your own tension and all that. For us, we just get the pre-stretched screens, and you start to know when the tension's giving. And luckily we have a GSG around towards where we can just take our frames, cut the mesh out, take it to them, and I think it's like $10 or $15 to get a mesh screen. So that is much more just cost effective for us, because those roller frames are expensive, and some of the other kind of gimmicky kind of snap-in screens, I've just heard, I haven't used them myself, but I've heard too many not so good things about those kind of snap-in tension screens, or whatever you call it. We just stick to the pre-stretch stuff. What's up, Juan? How you doing? Thanks for tuning in all the way from Peru. Good to hear. I'm glad you're doing well. My first filled order was printing on polyester. Any advice? Get a low cure ink, and at least for your white base, if you're doing a darker color ink onto, say, something that's like safety green or an orange or something like that, get a low cure color ink. Generally, we get away with using a low cure ink for the white base. We've been slowly switching over to all low cure inks, but we do have quite a bit of just kind of your regular plastisol ink. So get a low cure ink for your white base, and just try and keep the heat down, because once you print that white base and flash it, I think it only takes like 190 degrees, somewhere around there, to flash it. Maybe run off a test shirt, flash it, print your overprint colors if there's going to be any, or if it's just a dark color going on a lighter polyester, make sure that's a low cure ink. Print your shirt, run it through your conveyor dryer or however you're curing it, and I test at least one shirt to make sure everything's dialed in, because you don't want to go melting a bunch of shirts and sending them through the dryer and melting a dozen shirts before you realize it. We've certainly have had issues, and I think that's just any print shop. You can get things dialed in, but depending on what the weather's doing outside, how hot it is or how cold it is, you're constantly tweaking it. So always do a test. Maybe even order an extra shirt or a handful to get things dialed in before you do your production run. That's how we generally do it. What's the minimum required compressor for a 6.8 Javelin Auto? I think it's the 80-gallon, 7.5 horsepower. That's what we were running. And I mean, to be honest, if you could go bigger, I would, because it'll keep that thing running every 10 minutes or so. For us, we had our compressor right next to the press, and it irritated the crap out of Shannon. So if it's possible to put that compressor outside the building or put it in its own little room, that would be ideal, because it will eat up a lot of air, just because they're an older design, and automatics that are completely pneumatic tend to use a lot of air, especially those Javelins. But hey, it's it's a good starter press. I mean, I don't regret getting ours. What printing advice for new auto owner? Get in there and do it. Use a higher mesh screen. Print your white base. We generally use like a 195, sometimes a 230 if we're doing like simulated process, but use like a 230 mesh or even a 305 to help control the amount of ink that you're putting down as your overprint colors. And that just hit it once, do some test prints. It'll probably take you 2, 3, maybe even 4 shirts before your ink starts building up on the back. And as far as your separations go, with plastisol ink, you can just keep the separations butted up. But when it comes to like a white overprint, I would actually choke that back by maybe a pixel or a point, depending on what program you're separating it in. So that way they don't bleed together. And sometimes you might need to flash in between certain colors. Just depending on how many heads you have on your press, how many stations, all that jazz. And if you can toss in a flattening screen in there too, you'll get that much better result. So just print your white base, flash it, hit it with a flattening screen, use a higher mesh count, and you shouldn't have any problem doing wet on wet. And print your me in particular, I like to do the white last, so that way it's still bright. But sometimes there's certain colors that need to be printed last, like a fluorescent color. If you don't print that last, then it ends up being faded looking. So you might even, if you have 2 flashes, you might want to flash after that fluorescent color. And there's some colors that just like a cardinal cardinal colors tend to look kind of funky if those aren't printed last. So like with our press, we have the ability to put it in cycles mode towards where we can use just one flash, let it go around, print what colors we need to print. If they start to muddy up a little bit, you can always print 2 or 3 colors, flash it, come back, print another, 3, 4 colors, whatever it is. But for the most part, wet on wet will work just fine. Just use higher mesh. Kendra, how you doing, Kendra? I hope you guys are doing well. Hope you are staying busy. And I see your posts about your car. You got some cool projects going on. It's always awesome. Car enthusiast myself. If you guys don't know, I've got my other personal channel where I'll upload just some car projects, stuff that every now and then I need a little bit of a break from work kind of stuff, and it's a lot of fun until that starts feeling like work, and then I take a break from that. But good to hear from you. I hope everybody's doing well over there. Tell Maria I said hello. I have 3 cats in the print shop, and I totally understand. I'm not sure what that means. I get that you have cats. I've got a dog, and if I drop something on the, like if I drop a shirt on the floor, forget about it. It's got hair on it. No matter how much I sweep. Well, I guess that goes for any print shop. You drop it on the floor, it's bound to get some lint on it. You got to give it the good old screen printer snap and whoosh, get that stuff off of there. Thanks, Brad. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, it's been tough, dude. Ugh, man, poor Shannon. Let's see. My computer crapped out. Missed your reply. Let's see what your original question was. Pitfalls to switching to an auto. Just keep an eye on your ink. You don't want to run out of ink as you're printing, because then they won't be consistent. You'll be walking around the press more, learning the machine, depending on what machine it is. It might take you a little bit to get comfortable with it. But aside from that, just everything you need to hook it up, it's really not that bad. I just say, keep an eye on your flash, your inks, your squeegee pressures. Once you get it dialed in and have it figured out, you'll be fine. And it's a little easier to kind of... you'll definitely need to know what works settings wise for your cotton shirts, your polyesters, your tri-blends, that kind of stuff, because you can easily burn a tri-blend or even a 50-50 mix pretty easily if you're not paying attention. So test print. That'd be my advice. Let's see. Yeah, I appreciate that, Mauricio. Yeah, we need all the prayers we can get. Hey, it's damn it, I'm drawing a blank. I'm bad with name. David Emmons. Speaking of, Mr. David Emmons with the Artist Marketing Formula. God, came across him by accident because I've been looking into just kind of building like online courses and stuff like that. Really cool guy, fellow artist as well. His daughter is a YouTuber with a significant following, so I'm actually will be working here as soon as possible, as soon as I can. Once I kind of get caught up with some work and get my mind wrapped around things, I'm going to be working with David Emmons. Excuse me. It's been a long day. And he's going to help me with some of this online kind of courses that I'm wanting to develop, and also helping me reach some more of you guys, because it certainly would be nice to reach more people. It's when it comes to being a YouTuber, it's there's a couple ways you reach people, and the way I've done it is organically, just by posting content out there that hopefully people like, right? So it's either a hit or a miss. There's some videos that just do well. There's others that I'm not trying to be the next Mr. Beast, and one of the things is just like really wanting to help the community out, share as much free knowledge as I can. Certainly takes quite a bit of time to create these videos. And then the other part of it is, as far as being a YouTube creator, it takes a lot of time, and to be able to continue and sustain helping people out, you certainly have to make a living doing it. So that's where David's going to come in and help me make sure that I can continue to do what I love and put food on the table. Chuchi, what happened to your order? I'm not even sure what that means. I really liked the video when we went to the stadium and let people print shirts. Yeah, so that's all part of the live screen printing we do occasionally, which I really enjoy that. Once I get around to it, I would love to kind of market that a little more because it's a lot of fun. It's almost like a paid vacation. We have yet to go out of the state, but it's, as screen printers, it's definitely something I would work on marketing because it's a lot of fun. You get paid well. You get paid to travel. You get to meet a lot of cool people. And while you're screen printing, people are like, oh, that's cool. You let them try it, and it's a great way to network. I'm having trouble saving the SEPs ad on as the EPS. Any advice? Yeah, let me get Photoshop started. I'm going to circle back around to that. It's pretty simple. And just depending on which version of Photoshop and what platform you're on, the drop down menus might be a little different, but I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to kind of share my desktop here real quick. And so saving it as an EPS, let's go over to the desktop view real quick. Just give me 1 second here. So essentially what I would do is you're saving it as a DCS2, and some of these options might either be on your drop down immediately or it might take you into another step. So these RGB channels here, just delete them. Delete the channels, yes. So that way you're just left with your separate channels here. And then go to File, Save As, and Photoshop DCS2. Again, depending on what version of Photoshop, whether you're on a Mac or a PC, it might be in a little bit different of a location, or it might appear a little differently. So you can hit Save. Let's hit Replace. And right here, you want to save it as a single file, DCS. And essentially what that is doing is saving all your separations into that EPS file. Back in the day, they didn't have like a single file EPS. You'd have to save it as a multi-file, in which basically it would save every single separation as the EPS. You can do that as well and bring it into Illustrator. And bring all those files in, just select everything and then align everything together because it will have the same canvas size. So hopefully that answers your question. It's really difficult for me to be able to really walk every single person through that situation because it's very much dependent on your version of Photoshop, and then whether you're on a Mac or a PC, or even if you're on a Linux. I don't know. It's that's basically how I would go about doing it. That's kind of the manual way to do it. I wrote those separations to hopefully cover as many people as possible, but I'm currently working on diving into that a little more with action steps, so that way it answers as many questions as possible. But good question, and I hope that answers it. Let's see, Mikey, can you say your opinion about all the advertisement to make your own business on screen printing, that anybody can do it? I have 20 years of experience, therefore it sounds crazy. If I'm understanding this correctly, you're wanting to know what we did advertising wise. So initially when I started, before I got like real heavy into doing YouTube stuff, I would just record myself printing and then kind of showing the results. Wasn't even my face. Not that I was camera shy or anything. It was really mainly just to be like, hey, look, this is what I can do. So you can take those videos, post it onto YouTube, use all the characters you possibly can with your titles, make it very descriptive as to what it is. The more you can put in there description-wise, the better. Same thing for Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you're going to post it. And, make sure you leave your information somewhere in case someone's like, oh, that's cool. Can you print some shirts for me? Aside from that, it's just Google business listing, word of mouth. Always have some business cards on you to hand out to people that you talk to. Don't be afraid to be social. Get out there, talk to people, and be like, hey, you don't have to necessarily come up and give everybody your sales pitch. I think just kind of let it organically come up, because most people want to talk about what they do for a living, and or they're curious about what you're doing for a living. Obviously your friends are going to be easy people to talk to and be like, hey, if you come across anybody, here's this, your business card. And a website is very important. Make sure you do some search engine optimization. I plan on including a lot of this in a future course where I really kind of do more of a deep dive and show you on screen. Because I know there's a lot of, well, I wouldn't say there's a lot. There are screen printing classes out there where they teach you kind of the basics, and I'm wanting to kind of like pull together a course where I kind of give you my story, because I started my company with $0, and I took pre-orders, took the money from those pre-orders, made a press out of wood, bought one screen, and I already had a computer and an inkjet printer to do film. I was very familiar with that already, but really, I got that first job by back then it was forums. Forums was a huge deal, and then it became Facebook. And I just was like, hey, I was part of the Volkswagen community, and it's like, here's a design I created. I'm selling them for X amount of dollars a piece. Who's interested? Here's a link to pre-order your shirts. And then it was just constantly taking profit from the next order. So as soon as I did that first job, took a picture of it, posted it up on Facebook, and someone was like, hey, I didn't know you printed shirts. Can you do 300 shirts for my company? I was like, hell yeah. And so I took on that order, and just take pictures, record videos, capture as much as you can. Eventually you'll have enough of quote unquote of a portfolio out there that you won't even need to push it as much, and you'll kind of find clients. And as long as y'all's relationship stays well, your business relationship, and everything goes smoothly, they'll stick around for a lifetime, at least as long as they have work to send you. So I still have clients to this day. That second order, or my very first order, I guess you could say, that wasn't my own design, was they're still a client to this day. Heard from them the other day. They need some new shirts, or more shirts, I should say. Print it to win it. Print it to win it. Excuse me. I'm curious how long your dwell time is in the dryer for full color plastisol prints. I think I'm about 1 minute until temp gun shows 400 degrees. So we get ours to about anywhere from 320 to 380. If we're getting up to 380, it's kind of pushing it. It's really not very long. It's probably about 25 to 30 seconds. So what we're looking for, but because how we go about printing, I don't really use low mesh screens. So in other words, I can't even tell you the last time I used a 156. I think the last time we used like a 156 mesh was just because all of our 230 and 195, 305 mesh screens were all tied up. So ideally, what we like to do is use those higher meshes. If the print needs to be bright, we use a 195, 230 overprint colors. And what that'll do is it'll make the print not as thick as if you're using a 110 and you're doing a print flash print for your white base, and then you're hitting it with an overprint. At that point, you're using more ink. It's taking a lot more energy to cure it, so you're spending more money. So to me, it's always a good practice to use as low mesh screens as possible, or excuse me, high mesh. Put the least amount of ink down, 195. Most people will be happy with that. If they're kind of a stickler for like a really bright white print, then we might do 156 or 110, but we'll also charge more because it just takes more time to cure those kind of prints. So, and use a highlight white for a bright white. Use a separate white screen, so that way you're only putting that white down once. It's only so thick, and then you're putting your overprint color down, and you only have that one layer. Those two layers, your white base and then your overprint color. Now, it's perfectly fine if it's just a one color white shirt or a white print on a dark shirt, right? You can do the print flash print. That's just fine. But I'd say use 195 or so. If you're used to using 110s, try stepping it up to 156 and then using a separate screen for your white, even if it appears like it's two colors. Let's say, for example, red and white on a black shirt, you'd have your white base. Hi, Apollo. Your white base, your red, and then a separate screen for the white, and that will reduce how thick that film or that print is on your t-shirt. You'll use less ink. Sure, you might have to create another screen, but it'll also be faster. You can do your wet on wet printing. Production will be faster, less energy, less less materials as far as ink. Give that a whirl. Let's see. What up, Mikey? Just got an Anatol. That's awesome. I was seriously considering this year or maybe even last year, before everything got a little chaotic around here. That was our next move. But, at the moment, I'm sure one of these days, once things kind of settle down and we get Shannon healthy and everything, we'll revisit that and kind of revisit blowing the business back up. But until then, right now I'm happy with the way things are. I get as much help as I need, take in as much work as I want before it completely stresses me out. First auto ever. Should I use higher mesh count? Yeah. 195s, I'd try that for just kind of like simple spot color jobs. If you're used to using a 110, I'd say step it up to a 156 and then a 195, kind of transition so it's not as much of a shocker. But you use some higher mesh screens. Even if you're on a manual, I'd 200 plus So 195, 180-ishes would be good for a white base, spot colors. Then your overprints, 230 on up to 305. It just depends on how much you want to control that ink, depending on what color you're printing down. Tell us, how did you start screen printing and how the idea stalked in your head? Did you start working in your own business or somewhere else? So I got into screen printing. I went to the college, graduated in 2001. Immediately started working for this company that made kites and latex balloons, but they screen printed on latex balloons. So when I started out, one of the first things I had to do was create film to be exposed to the screens they use to print on balloons. And it's a whole different animal because they're using rubber inks. There's like 0 to no tension on the mesh because they need it to form around the balloons. And they also did offset printing, which was like a rubberized plate, almost like a stamp. So I knew how to make the film, and I just did graphic design work for a long time. And I remember thinking back in, it's maybe 2003, 2004, I was kind of putting together a business plan of starting a t-shirt business, but I had no idea how to even get started. Back in 2003, there wasn't anything like YouTube where it's just like, here's how you do it. I mean, you really had to dig pretty deep and get books and all that kind of stuff, which I did. And being young and getting out of college, certainly money was tight. So the easiest thing for me to do at that time was to get into offering freelance graphic design. And so that's what I did as a side hustle. And then eventually I kind of got tired of sitting behind a computer. And I was like, let me revisit this whole screen printing thing. Saw Jonathan from Cat Spit's YouTube videos, and it was kind of like, oh, okay, that's how you do it. Ryanette's videos. And then at that point, I was like, how do I do this for cheap? And as I had mentioned before, I took pre-orders, came up with a design, put it out there, took pre-orders, bought shirts, took what little profit I would have made a press, got inks, got a screen. I think I was using water-based ink and a hairdryer to cure them. And then from there, it was just showing examples. And it only took that one post and people were like, hey, can you print some shirts for me? I was like, yeah. So took on some orders. Whatever profit I made from those orders, I invested it into the next thing that was going to make things faster, like a flash, a $600 flash. So I could actually flash the ink, and then got into plastisol printing. And as soon as I finished that job, I posted it up, and it just was pretty easy to sell screen printing, because screen printing, everybody's got something screen printed in their closet, or there's a business that needs screen printed shirts. There's just so many ways to market. It's pretty easy, and there's a lot of work out there. There's enough for everybody, and I just found it so much easier to grow a screen printing business than it was like a graphic design firm. So much easier. It's a lot more physical work, but more people know what custom shirts are versus what a graphic designer or what an ad agency does, and there's lots of great tutorials out there these days. And it was just slowly building it up, just bought a little here, bought a used press. I think the first good sized profitable job was, I had already had a washout booth, and I was still curing things with a flash, and I made like $2,000 profit from this particular job. And I think it was like 150 shirts that I did, but they were some nicer like tank tops and stuff like that. And I took that and bought the tiny little Ranar. You can go back and look at my little review video. Bought the conveyor dryer, and then from there it was like I was pretty much set. Then it's the next step. It's like, how do I make enough profit to afford an auto? And you'll get there. It just takes time. Joseph Lopez, how you doing, buddy? Good to have you. Jason, how you doing? Shannon doing okay? Stay calm, ponytail boy. Shut your teeth. Yeah, go back. I don't want to repeat it again because it is some pretty heavy news, but just know that she's hanging in there, and we're doing everything we can to get her healthy, and we could use all the prayers. I'm not. I've always been a spiritual person. And have gone to. My family's Catholic, and to me, certainly religion's like a touchy thing to talk about, but we could use all the prayers that we can get, whether you're spiritual. I'm just going to leave it there. Religion and politics, something I just don't really like to get into, but I am going to ask for some prayers, though. Hello, greetings from Indonesia. What time is it over there? And great to have you on. Thanks. Hello to you. Thanks for joining us. Any recommendations for registration boards for manuals that hold a screen like a tri-lock? They have tri-locks for manuals. I know M&R does, but I really wouldn't worry about getting into tri-locks or anything like that on a manual. I have a friend that owns a print shop, and I won't tell you what company he bought it from, but he spent, I think, $3,000 on it, and the thing's just collecting dust because they're pretty tough to dial in. They can get you in the ballpark. It's very rare that you're going to set it all up and it's just going to be dialed in. So really what it's doing is getting you in the ballpark towards where you can just toss the screen on there, have your tri-lock, pull your screen forward, lock things down, move on to the next screen, rather than having to take it and you put it on press and you're just kind of doing one of these things. So it saves that time, and I really wouldn't worry about a tri-lock until you're at the point where you have an auto and you're cranking stuff out just fast. That's when they're a good tool. For the most part, like what we do is we register things up in a fairly similar location on the screen, tape it down, we put it on press, print our white base onto a test shirt with our registration marks, move over to the next screen, table the press up, and then just register things up, tighten it down, and then fine tune it with your micro registration and move on to the next screen, load it up with ink, run off a test print, and then it's like, oh, okay, the red needs to go over, maybe a millimeter to the left or 1/16 of an inch, depending on what side of the world you're on. So I wouldn't worry about the whole tri-lock thing too much. That's just supply companies trying to sell you stuff you don't need. Wet on wet technique for spot versus simulated. Exactly the same. Higher mesh counts. And if it's spot colors, just pay attention to those colors that are budding up. Don't try and trap them or anything like that. And occasionally you might need the flash, but for the most part, you should be able to get away with wet on wet printing. You just have to get used to the idea of You don't have to flash between every single color. You can still get nice looking prints without flashing between every single color. Certainly, they come out looking smoother, but that's also because you've hit that overprint color and it's warm, but then you're coming back and hitting it with another color. And so essentially what you're doing is you're turning your screens into a flattening screen. So use a flattening screen, print your white base, flash it. Use a flattening screen to mash that stuff down. Use some higher mesh screens and go to town on it, and they'll come out looking good. Do you still only own one embroidery machine? Can you keep up with bigger orders? That's where I'm falling short. I think I have the TC 1501. Yeah, so we have the TC 1501 as well. We still just have the one embroidery machine. We really don't. So say for example, it's kind of one of those you build it, it will come kind of things. Field of Dreams, if anyone got that reference. If we got a sizable order that was like thousands of caps, then we would just outsource it until we got to a point where like that's consistent. You know, occasionally we'll get those 100-piece orders of caps and all that. But for the most part, most of our jobs are 20 and 30 counts towards where we can knock something like that out in a day. Occasionally we will get 100 pieces as far as caps go, 100 polos or whatever. It's not every day, but we really don't push the embroidery side of things as much. But if we happen to get a client in that's like, yeah, I would like to have a couple dozen caps to go with this order, it's like, cool, okay, we don't need to outsource it. We're doing it here. We even digitize it ourselves, unless I'm just completely swamped. Eventually I'll grow that part of things, but I don't really, most of our orders are kind of like in the 100 t-shirt range, right? And then we get those 1,000, couple thousand pieces, maybe a couple, 2 or 3 times a year, because our clients know, or other screen printers know, that we have an automatic and they might be on a manual. And they're like, hey, will you do this kind of on a contract basis kind of thing? A lot of times it's contract work, but occasionally, we're charging full price kind of thing. So to answer your question, we still have the one. Boy, I really just went off on a rant there, didn't I? Do you use Discharge? No, I hate it. Discharge is cool. I never got soaked up into that whole Discharge fad and water based and all that. For one, from my experience, I would not recommend. Certainly you can pull it off, but it's going to take you a lot of time, because you might have to run it through a conveyor 2 or 3 times. Really, you need a gas force air conveyor dryer to control those temperatures, and they have to dwell for like 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. Most of us don't have a tunnel that long. Even this 8-foot conveyor dryer, it's a forced air dryer, so it can do water-based and discharge. And when I did discharge and water-based prints, water-based was fine, but I'd have to sometimes run them through a couple times. Otherwise, I'd have the thing slowed down so slow that I'm able to do like 60 shirts an hour, and that's just not very feasible. And then as far as discharge goes, once that chemical reaction takes place, those discharge chemicals are coming up, and from my experience, it's kind of like you don't know whether your oven's on fire or the t-shirt's on fire. It's just a horrible smell. Plastisol doesn't smell any better, but ugh. Hey, Eddie Jr., how you doing, buddy? Hope you're doing well. Zappa shoes, Zappa zapatos. How you doing? I don't even know if you speak Spanish or anything like that, but I like saying zapatos. Good to see you too, or have you on, because I know you can't see me. 8-Ball Imaging. Been a while, buddy. How you doing? Glad to have you. Thank you, Jason. We miss you guys too. You know, Shannon and I were talking the other day, and we were kind of like looking at some of our when we used to go live every Monday, and I certainly do miss it. And I really hope we can get back to doing that one of these days. I'm going to try and carry the torch and do it. It was certainly nice having Shannon on because she's such a character and such a great person, and our chemistry, us bickering back and forth as a couple, was a lot of fun. It was certainly a highlight to the start of our week, and we've just always enjoyed it, and certainly makes me sad in the pants that she's just sick, and we're not able to do it, and I've got a lot more responsibility on my hands, and once I kind of get some more things in place towards where I don't have to stress as much about one, making a living, and then how Shannon's doing. I'll certainly be doing the Monday lives, and we'll continue to do it, and who knows, maybe at some point I'll find someone that's brave enough, or once Shannon recovers, kind of thing. It's her main concern at this point is it's noticeable that we've talked about her doing it kind of as we did it initially, with her just being like a voice, but it was cool having her on camera too, and she's not ready to be on camera right now. So what up, Mikey? Thanks for sharing all your experience on screen printing. It helps so much. Well, I really appreciate that, and I'm glad that it's helping all you guys out there with learning how to screen print. I mean, this is what this channel is all about, and I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm just trying to pay it forward, because I did consume a lot of YouTube videos created by Jonathan and Ryan at Ryanet, and it's certainly cool. It was kind of weird initially. It's like, what? I should make how to screen print YouTube videos because that space is already covered. But I do think that there's something to be said about having multiple channels out there. I mean, this day and age, there's a lot more, which I think is awesome, because everybody teaches things a little differently, and there's certainly more than one way to go about teaching these things, and to teach them without necessarily being like, here's our new product, this is what you need. For me, this is what's been working. It's nothing anybody's pushed on me. Certainly there's certain equipment, and that's one of the things too about and they, like, I'll say Ryanet and Jonathan at Catspit, certainly everybody needs to make a living, right? And so it's like, hey, here's what we're selling for this information. Not necessarily for this information, putting this information out there for free. This is what our offer is, and this is how we'll continue to be able to do this kind of stuff. And so for me, I'd say one of the great things is there's really nobody out there that can tell me you can't say this or that about whatever products. I mean, I've tried a lot of stuff, and what we've kind of narrowed, or what I've narrowed it down to as far as emulsion inks and what screen meshes. That's me in particular. Someone else might do it differently, and I'm sure. It's just, it's good having different point of views, different ways of thinking about things. Someone might solve a problem a little differently than I do. Let's see. Jason says, "What happened to Catspit? Haven't seen anything from him in a while." He is busy selling equipment. That's what he's doing. He's got enough videos out there. I'm sure he probably has about 1,000 videos. So he has enough videos out there and has taught as much as he possibly can, that he is actually doing really well with his screen print supply business. But I do also think that he kind of feels, I've talked to him, and he does kind of feel like I think maybe feels a little out of touch with channels like myself or Rye Beats or Lee Stewart, for example, because really, in my opinion, what was great and what is still great to this day about his channel is it's very cut forward, no fancy cameras or transitions. And if I go watch Lee Stewart, I'm there because I'm like, this is within the niche that I enjoy. This is what I do for a living, and I enjoy seeing it put in such a kind of cinematic way that makes it very exciting. And when it comes to Jonathan and some of Ryanette's older videos, it's kind of like a classroom experience. It's, here's your point of view, and I'm going to show you how to do this, and I'm going to show you every situation. And he was able to crank out a lot of videos based on that platform. So he's still there. Like, occasionally he posts stuff. He's still around, still doing well, but I think he's feeling a little out of touch with the YouTube community based on some of the impressive camera work that is out there on YouTube now. Well, guys, it has been fun. I really appreciate it. Give this video a thumbs up, like the video, comment down below if you're catching us later. I hope everybody's doing well, and as always, I appreciate you tuning in. Keep an eye out for some more tutorials. I would love to get back to doing weekly stuff, but at this moment it's going to have to be as I can kind of do things, because I'm also developing some courses, which keep an eye out for that as well. Just developing courses to really kind of package things together towards where it's like a curriculum, where if you're starting out screen printing, it will guide you from not having anything to even being able to market yourself. I don't want to overwhelm someone that's new, but I'll give you a good example. I didn't know what the hell a blowout gun was until maybe 2 or 3 years deep into screen printing. I eventually consumed enough screen printing videos that I came across. It was almost like a vlog where someone was visiting someone's shop, and I was like, what the hell is that? I had been using, I think it was press wash to try and get pinholes out or ink stains, and my clients would say, what is this? What is this stain? I can't get it out. I want you to redo this this shirt or whatever, So just kind of really taking some of the things I've already done and compiling it into a course, and continuing to add more and more stuff. So drop a comment down below. What kind of videos would you like to see? We're going to continue to do lots of free stuff, but also working on some courses, so that way I can continue to make free videos for you guys and kind of share our knowledge. We'll get back to doing some more vlogging stuff. Lots to look forward to. I'm never going to toss the towel in. I'm constantly wanting to improve not only my craft as a screen printer, a teacher, but also a YouTuber, and helping the community out. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. I'll try and make it 7 p.m. Monday next week. No promises, but just keep your notifications on. Hit the bell if you haven't just yet. And we'll see you in the next one. Everybody have a good evening, and I hope you have a great week. Bye.